Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, we've talked a lot about Russia, Russian foreign policy, and then we talked about how China is not really, punching its weight in the world, and content just really to be in the shadows, allowing Russia to take the lead and to do all the heavy lifting. But recently, China seems to have taken a different tack. It now seems to be quite active around the world. So we had Wang Yi, a very senior figure in the Chinese leadership. He's more than just a Chinese foreign minister. He visited Russia and had meetings with Lavrov and Putin. And he also talked with Blinken at the Munich Security Conference, a meeting that evidently did not go well. And we also had the 12-point peace plan that was released by China a week or so ago. And then before that, we had two big statements issued by China setting out its views on the world. And now we have Alexander Lukashenko visiting China. And rumor is that the Xi Jinping will make a visit to Moscow sometime in the spring. We don't know, that hasn't been confirmed, but that seems to be the rumor now. So the real question is this: is China planning to make a decisive intervention in the Ukraine war? And particularly, and there's every indication that China is not happy with the way this war is going. It's been going on for a year. It had obviously expected. I mean, they met just before the start of Russia's so-called special military operation. They met in Beijing. Putin obviously gave assurances that this will be done in a quick, efficacious manner. That hasn't happened. So one has to wonder, does China now feel that it needs to make an intervention? So it's presented this peace plan, which was quite heavily weighted towards the Russian side. We can take another look at it. We talked about it last week, but we can take another look at it. And because as you can see, that it talks about abandoning the Cold War mentality. And then it talks about the ceasefires, resuming peace talks, but then it also talks about ending unilateral sanctions. And I think that maybe there was one where they talked about the mutual security concerns that have to be respect for mutual security concern here. The legitimate security interests and concerns of all countries must be taken seriously and addressed properly. And then, basically, you can't have security at the expense of someone else. So that was the peace plan. And so you have to wonder then whether China is now thinking that if this peace plan is simply turned down, as the Americans have turned it down, whether the time will have come for China to step up its assistance to Russia and ensure that, because a Russian defeat is certainly not in China's interests. Anyway, what do you think, Peter?
Well, I think, in the broader scheme of things, both Russia and China, and I think China's, this is kind of their pat response to the quote unquote international community, which is run by the US, is that it's practicing multipolarity. I mean, its position in the world is not going to be an exact carbon copy of Russia's. It's not. I mean, it's a different country. It has different interests. At this point in time, and over the last couple decades, Russia's interests and China's interests overlap very, very strongly, but they're not the same thing. And I think that that's something the Chinese really want to make clear, that we see our preferences, we see the injustices, we see how Western hegemony is damaging the international community, but this is how we see it, okay? And our Russian colleagues, well, they see it their way, okay? Also, next layer, well, I think I just saw snippets of it, of this new congressional committee, or special select committee, whatever they call it, on China. And a lot of bipartisanship there, George. Maybe because everyone's getting red-faced over Ukraine and they want to focus on something else. That's my opinion. I think it's true. But I think the Chinese, they're patient. They have a much longer view. It's obvious the kind of outcome they would like to see in Ukraine, and I think the Russians feel the pressure. I think you're absolutely right. And is Ukraine the issue where China really wants to throw its hat in the ring? Is this where it wants to go first? You have to pick the hills you die on. Okay, is this the right one? And I think there's a lot of thinking going into that. But going back to the select committee, obviously, and you see this on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. Okay, they're all getting in lockstep. The new enemy. American foreign policy loves the enemy. It needs one to keep it cohesive. And of course, the end of Cold War mentality. Of course, the Chinese know it's our turn now. They know it. Okay,
but that's the thing, that they're looking at Ukraine. Then they've seen what NATO has done. They've thrown everything at Russia, and at this stage, they have to wonder whether Russia can win this war. And if Russia can't win this war, then that's a serious problem for China, because they see what's the writing on the wall. This bipartisanship. They were probably hoping that there'd be an improvement in relations with the United States when Biden became president. That didn't happen. So they don't have anything to look forward to. They could get Trump again in a couple of years. But even if it isn't Trump, whoever it is will take a very hostile position toward China. And we talked last week about that they're now increasing their military deployments in Taiwan. So China sees, hey, what they've done to Russia, they're going to do to us. And if they defeat Russia, then they're going to come after us the very next day. I mean, they're not even going to pause for breath. And so I think that's why China is concerned. And so now the real question is, how are they going to express this? Will it just be we're going to send more, or are they going to send lethal weapons? I mean, that's the rumor. China has neither confirmed nor denied that they're going to sell lethal weaponry, but they may just start talking now seriously about a military partnership. I mean, they said there's no limit to our partnership, so there's no limits. Now, so far they've said no. Both sides have said no to any military alliance, but things are now different. This is a much more serious situation.
Well, on the arms thing, I personally, George, I think it's a complete red herring. Okay, I don't see any problem on the part of Russia's side to procure weapons that it needs. Okay, I may be wrong. I'm not an expert on military.
I kind of thought that as well. On the other hand, if Russia really has all the weaponry it needs, you kind of wonder, well, why haven't you wrapped this up? So you have.
Well, I'm going to use one of your points to argue against you, is that they're keeping their powder dry because they're fighting the entire Western alliance here. I don't think the Chinese are so much concerned about Russia losing. I think that they obviously know that Russia will win. It's how they're going to win is I think that they're very concerned with. They speak very much about having harmony in international relations. As much as Beijing is eyeing Moscow and Kiev, it is eyeing the global South, where that China's future is. Okay, I mean, this new Cold War mentality, which is very, very real. You have Europe completely cowed by Washington right now. Europe's relationship with China, for me, is a big question mark right now. They say things and they do other things. It's very, very confusing. And China's future is with the Belt and Road Initiative, which is very much targeted to the global South. So I think it's more of a process how they get there. Okay, that's what I think the Chinese are most concerned about. And obviously, George, they know. I mean, you see all this really reckless rhetoric coming out of Washington about Taiwan, which is just so unnecessary. Okay, in reading just the headlines on antiwar.com, U.S. Senator I don't care what they think. Okay, going to Taiwan, really just reckless commentary, and the Chinese know that they're next on the block when it comes.
They're next on the block, but they're also. I mean, as anybody, they're looking around and they look at Russia and they say, the West has crossed one red line after another and you haven't really responded. That's a serious problem. I mean, it's today all the stories about about a dozen drones have hit targets in Russia. Now, when you start hitting targets in Russia, we know who's doing this thing with the drones. I mean, it's not the Ukrainians, this is the Americans. The Americans are providing them with the targets, and the Americans are in control of their drone program. So, all these various red lines that the Russians have laid down, the West has crossed, and they're going to keep crossing them. And that's why I think China is quite concerned, really, that,
I think,
say how, when I just want to let me finish, you said how, the question is how they'll win. I mean, you're right. But that means what? The war dragging on another 2, 3, 4 years with enormous casualties on all sides. That's not a good outcome. Yeah, let's say Russia wins and loses 2 million lives. I mean, that's not a good outcome.
No, obviously it's not, and I don't think it'll get even remotely near that. Okay, I don't, not for a second do I think the Chinese are having second thoughts. No, I don't think they are at all. I think that they may be frustrated with, in agreeing with you, the decision-making process of the Russians and how they pursued this conflict. It'll be for future historians, and they won't be liberal, because if they are, don't believe them. But Russia went in with a very, very small force, invading a very large country. And now they've had a partial mobilization. So they've got about 500,000 troops lined up. Okay, what are you going to do with them? Okay, spring is here. Actually, today is the first day of spring. Okay, so George, I agree with you. There are concerns, but with Europe in a state of apparent collapse, at least on the diplomatic front, and the U.S. Flabbergasted by its lack of victory in Ukraine, they're certainly going to turn their attention.
Now this is where we have to part, because for the Americans, they think this has been a success. They're not looking for victory. They're not looking for a military victory for Ukraine. For them, a victory is Russia is bogged down. Russia's unable to win. Russia's losing manpower. And that's a success for them. They don't have a goal of marching on to Moscow. I mean,
no, they don't.
Obviously, ideally, they would love to conclude that way, but they think the longer this goes on, the weaker Putin's position will be, and ultimately there might well be a Russian governmental collapse. That's how Americans are thinking. So I don't see that they think this is going badly for us. I think they think that this is going badly for Russia. They don't think it's going badly for them.
I disagree with you. I disagree with you very strongly. If you look at the growing protests that are going on, challenges in Europe about even NATO, not just the conflict in Ukraine. Also, at a certain point, George, when you have a small town in Ohio, drowning in chemical waste, and Secretary Yellen goes to, Kiev and with a $10 billion package. That's untenable. That cannot last for much longer. I think that the Russians see the West fraying at the seams. Okay.
I mean, I think that's the view of certain, Republicans, and maybe more than Republicans, who make those points about Ohio, right, and about so. But as far as the administration, there's a report out by the Rand Corporation. It's more a blog than him. And every single person at Rand says, hey, Russia has turned out to be much weaker than we thought it was. Now, yeah, obviously it's Rand, they're funded by the Pentagon and so on. Nonetheless, they express the view of official Washington. They think, hey, we called Russia's bluff. Russia's turned out to be much weaker. We thought Russia was a lot stronger and had become quite strong under Putin. It isn't. Now, admittedly, that's the current state of play. Who knows what's going to happen? But I don't agree that the Americans regard this as a failure for them. I think that they think that they've done a good job. They haven't lost any lives. $100 billion is a drop in the ocean for the United States. It's nothing. A $1.6 trillion budget, nothing. The Americans could just blink and move on to the next 100 billion.
Well, George, let's flip the script, because we started with China. So where does China go? Does it make peace? Make nice with the West? Does it compromise? No. That's why look, when particularly in the time of military conflicts, that is the worst time to try to predict things, okay? Because no one is ever right. It always comes out differently than you thought. Though at the same time, again, I'm going to parrot your words here. Sure, the Chinese may be wondering the thought process in the Kremlin, but to use your own words, George, they must marvel in the fact that Russia's taken on the entire Western world.
Right.
And I think one more point here is, well, I don't know how you erase things from the ether, okay? But what has been said in the last year about what the West wants, and what's said behind closed doors is another thing, but publicly what is said, okay? Liberating Ukraine, whatever it takes, as long as it takes, as much as it takes, that's not going anywhere either, George. And I disagree with you. You get to guns and butter. You cannot keep funding this here. There are too many other people saying other things have to be spent. I mean, that is an untenable position, unless you want to shut down all social media and have a total totalitarian society where no one can talk, okay?
Well, then again, you look at the votes. I mean, ultimately, you look at the votes in Congress. The votes are overwhelmingly in favor of giving everything to Ukraine. I mean, sure,
I don't think we're going to see another package the same way that we saw at the end of last year. I don't see.
No, I think it'll be, there's going to be a few more belligerent Republicans, but we're still talking about politicians we can count on with using two hands. We know about Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, those people. There's about 12 of them, maybe 15 of them. In the Senate, you've got 2 or 3, J.D. Vance, maybe Rand Paul, maybe a couple of others. That's almost nothing. Admittedly, it could change. Vietnam, things change very quickly, and that's always a possibility. But as things stand, there is overwhelming consensus thinking that this is okay because we are not getting killed. Now, but going back to the China point, I think China is concerned about how this war is going. I think they are concerned that Russia's not winning it, and I think they're going to step up to the plate. I mean, I think they're going to start providing direct assistance. I don't think they're going to sign a formal military alliance. I think they're going to start providing assistance because they want Russia to win this war and do it quickly. Because the longer it goes on, the worse it is for Russia, the worse it is for everyone.
Yeah, again, I'm going to stick with my position. I think it's a complete red herring. I think it's just invented out of whole cloth. I mean, George, you're the last person I have to say this to, is that, the laptop, Russiagate, all of these things, and they ended up being all just, a trickery and propaganda. Until somebody someone that I trust can give me some hard evidence that this is the case. Now, having said that, I think if the Russians said, hey, you've got this drone we've been watching, can you throw us a few thousand? I mean, I wouldn't, sure, that might happen. Sure, that might happen. But what they're trying to do, it's always deflecting. Russia's always losing, they're losing so bad they're taking Iranian drones, which even that is kind of dubious. My position on that is that the Iranian drones are probably manufactured in Russia. They're really, really cheap and very effective. Okay?
Well, either way,
but having said all that, George, I don't see things falling apart.
Yeah, Russia has not won. I mean, we're looking at the facts on the ground. Russia has not won. We listen to the various experts, whom we respect, Doug McGregor, Scott Ritter, and so on, who were predicting a Russian victory last summer. It hasn't materialized. I mean, we saw the Russians' wartime objectives: demilitarization, denazification, Donetsk and Lugansk. None of those 3 objectives have been realized so far. And I'm not saying, well, that means they've lost or anything like that. Things can change. Things always change quickly in war. But nonetheless, they haven't been accomplished. And if you're a leader in Beijing, you start getting worried. I mean, you'd had assurances from Putin that this should be pretty straightforward. And it's clearly not straightforward because NATO has actually thrown everything it has at you and will continue to do so. See, this is where, again, I disagree with some of our friends who say, oh, NATO doesn't have anything left in the cupboard. I don't think so. I think NATO has a lot left in the cupboard, and I think it's going to keep throwing things at Russia.
Yeah. Again, when pronouncements come out of Western capitals that, short of ammo, short of this, again, is that just a deflection? I don't know, George. Okay, but it seems to me, at least on the face of it, NATO was never really designed to fight anyone of strength. Okay, it was always out of area. Have absolute complete air superiority. The NATO was just not designed to do this. It was a platform for the U.S. for its shenanigans all through the Arab and Middle East. Okay, so but again, I guess we're just kind of stuck because we're on a moving, rolling floor. Okay. I have to believe that there was a partial mobilization for some reason. Okay, obviously, it wasn't particularly popular. When is a mobilization or the draft ever popular?
It isn't. But the problem is that with war is that a lot of it is just very bad, and unfortunately, it's usually best to bite the bullet right away, get all the pain out of the way immediately, and then things just get sorted out. But this way of fighting a war, I don't see that this is going to end well. Kind of this.
I do. We differ on that one. It will.
Well, I think so. But again, a war of attrition is very strange because, I mean, Putin said the other day, saying in an interview, said, we are not fighting against the Ukrainian people, we are fighting against NATO. That's correct. That's absolutely correct analysis. But who's getting killed? Ukrainian people. So when we talk about a war of attrition, we're talking about Ukraine's hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians getting killed. No NATO, no NATO citizen, as far as we know, is getting killed. So that's so we're fighting NATO, but NATO is sitting pretty. Everyone in NATO, they have dinner on time, drink red wine. They're not getting killed. So you're fighting against NATO correctly, but the only people getting killed are Ukrainians and Russians.
Well, okay, let's say hypothetically that with this enhanced public support and material support for the folks in Taiwan. And that triggers a Chinese reaction. And I think you and I have agreed. I mean, if there was a declaration of independence, all bets are off. China is going to do what it's going to do. Okay. Do you think that the Chinese will want to pulverize all of Taiwan into ashes? I don't think so. Okay. Why am I saying this, George? Because, a year plus, people still go out to eat in Kiev. Okay.
Right.
And you're right. I mean, if you want to win and you have the assets and you have the wind to your back, just stomp it out. Firebomb it. Dresden it. Okay. That's not what the Russians want. They don't want that at all, and they don't want that.
But that calculation has obviously not been a success, because had they moved into Kiev,
success
from the beginning, let's say they could take Kiev. Now, let's say you could say, okay, that's a meat grinder. You're going to suffer enormous casualties trying to take Kiev, which is correct. It might have ended the war then and there. Whatever losses you would have suffered would still have been less than the losses you're suffering now.
We don't know.
If this war of attrition just drags on, and again, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands are getting killed, and again, you say, well, it would have been better suffer whatever casualties you're going to suffer trying to take Kiev. It's still going to be a smaller number than the numbers now.
Yeah, well, that's you and I've been quarreling about this for over a year.
No question. I mean, we don't know.
Hey,
ultimately, we don't know why Russia made the calculation that it made.
Somebody has to say it, and we're saying it. Okay, right. We're expressing our opinions. Okay, and not worrying about looking over our shoulder. Is that I personally don't think that Russia in this military operation has any intention whatsoever of occupying Kiev under any circumstances. Okay, but what they do want is regime change. And that's what they're trying to calculate doing. That's a really tough ask. Tough. Okay.
Very,
I mean,
very
if you don't have a gun, a gun at the a huge gun right in front of the presidential administration, it's pretty hard to get what you want. Regime change.
Right.
I agree.
But that's in a way, when you look at how others have fought wars, that was pretty much how you conclude a war. I mean, it's like, when the Soviet Union invaded Hungary in '56, regime change was absolutely front and center. We're going to take out Imre Nagy. I mean, that's it. And we're going to replace him with our man. Same with Czechoslovakia. They took out Dubček. I mean, you have to have regime change. You just simply occupying a piece of the territory. You're just asking for trouble, because so long as your foe is still there, he's going to be on television all the time and attending Hollywood Oscar ceremonies and whatnot.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, in using your line of argument, unfortunately, Russia's army is not the Red Army, because when someone said the Red Army is coming, you had no doubt what was coming.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I think that's unfortunately the case.
Yeah, well, George,
for many years, the Soviet Union had this huge reputation that they built up during World War II. Unfortunately, that's dissipated. For many reasons, not just because of the special military operation, but it doesn't have the reputation it once had.
It's very difficult to explain to people. I mean, I celebrated my birthday with a nice group of friends on Sunday.
You got a lot of congratulations from gagglers, so you should be happy that a lot of gagglers wished you happy birthday.
And there were 12 people at the table, including me, and I'm the only person that doesn't have a relative in Ukraine. Okay, it's a lot harder, going in and just carpet bomb a city like the United States did to European civilian targets during the Second World War. There's no stomach for it, and I don't think it would be tolerated. And that's
exactly what's happening now. This war of attrition is leading to tens of thousands getting killed. I mean, that's what's happening now. I mean, relatives are getting killed.
Well, I mean,
young men are getting killed on both sides. Countries with already having serious demographic problems are losing young men in the tens of thousands. That's a serious problem for future generations.
Absolutely. But given let's say so-called more neutral sources like the United Nations or something like that, even they have come up with civilian casualties that are tiny compared to the military casualties, which is an aberration in 20th century wars. Okay, civilians took the brunt of it. Okay,
right.
So I mean,
but it's still family. I mean, young men who are getting killed in Bakhmut,
and talk about the millions that left and that may never come back.
Yeah. No,
right, everybody. George, I think this is our monthly vent.
Monthly vent. Yeah, we have the disagreement. Well, I just want to show you just before we end.
Okay.
This is the document the Chinese published, and it's not that exciting. It's called U.S. Hegemony and Its Perils. And
it's very long.
It's long. We don't have to go through that, but it's they talk about color revolutions. The United States has developed hegemonic playbook of colored revolutions. U.S. exercises double standards on international rules. The U.S. arbitrarily passes judgment on democracy in other countries, fabricates a false narrative of democracy versus authoritarianism to incite estrangement, division, rivalry, and confrontation. Military hegemony has caused humanitarian tragedies. And then the Bretton Woods system. United States exploits the world's wealth to help with its seigniorage. It costs only about 17 cents to produce a $100 bill, but other countries had to pony up $100 of actual goods. The hegemony of the US dollar is the main source of instability and uncertainty in the world economy. It's a comprehensive
pretty good laundry list.
Exactly. The US willfully suppresses its opponents with economic coercion. And then they bring up even the Japan, look, the way they dealt with Japan in the 1980s after the Plaza Accord. It is a laundry list. It's like they've been scouring the internet for all the.
But you know, George, I mean, it's fine for the Chinese to point this out, and I probably wouldn't disagree on a lot of those points. But that's how hegemons operate. Okay, I don't care if it's the Roman Empire or the British Empire, Russian Empire.
Yeah,
that's how they operate. Okay,
exactly.
It's not fair, but that's empire.
That's it. Absolutely right. Exactly. They, hey, you've got great powers. Great powers are going to use all the leverage they have at their disposal to maintain their great power status, and others are going to suffer at the hands of it. Yeah. Anyway, that's that document. And then they published another one about how to solve foreign policy via cooperation rather than confrontation. So, but I just want to show that they've done the 12-point peace plan, these two big documents. And then, Wang Yi's kind of trek through world's capitals. It does look like the Chinese now are stepping up their diplomacy.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that the Ukraine crisis is an epicenter of reflecting how frail the international system is, and the Chinese are saying, this is a path to disaster for everyone, including ourselves here eventually, because China's reach grows every single day around the world. It was said to me this morning, its economy is on all cylinders right now. It's, the lockdowns are gone, COVID's out, and they're moving ahead very, very quickly. And I think that that's one of the reasons why they are stepping up, because I think they see a void. Obviously the global South is soured on Washington's proxy war against Russia. Russia has actually come up in esteem in the global South as a result of this, irrespective of what the New York Times and all the rest of them talk about. And I think the Chinese see this as an opportunity, and out of self-interest also, to kind of speak up and have a different narrative that doesn't have a Cold War mentality. And that's the DNA of the West. They have a Cold War mentality to their very, very core. And the Chinese are challenging it. But having said that, we had a fantastic conversation here, because I think that's what a lot of people are talking about. Okay.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, the Chinese are presenting an alternative view. Which is that we prefer cooperation to confrontation. And although it sounds very banal, but who doesn't prefer cooperation to confrontation? The fact is the West does prefer confrontation. It's always has a confrontational attitude, to whatever countries around, authoritarianism, democracy, communism versus the non-communism. It's always, you're either with us or you're against us, global war on terror. It's always some kind of a belligerent threat to the rest of the world. You better jump in line. So it is a different approach. Now, who knows,
but having said that,
work itself out, but it is a different approach.
But having said that, it's not benign, George. Okay, how many countries, a country in Central America or in Africa, and say, we'd like to cooperate. Hey, you need a couple bridges? We can build that dam over there for you. We know how to build these factories in 9 months. It's not benign. It is in self-interest as well. Okay, absolutely. They're just saying, we really, whatever you do in the borders of your country, your religion, your family, that's your business. Okay. Right. Prefer you trade in our currency and not that guy's currency. Okay, it's not benign. It's in self-interest. They're just saying is that we're not looking to divide people, or even go into your country and divide it and put extremists in power like they did in Ukraine. Okay, right. So I think that approach there, but it is not. It has self-interest in there. Correct. It was. I think it became popular in the 1990s. Win-win. That is kind of a win-win approach.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think that it is very much a kind of, hey, how do we try to solve problems rather than, hey, you've got to be like us. And I think the Chinese do not, the same with the Russians. They don't want anyone to copy their system or, do anything like that. It's like, they want people to, not interfere in their own internal affairs. But they don't interfere in
George is absolutely right. Because, and a perfect example of this is this. If someone from Hungary immigrates to the United States, lives there for 10 years, learns English, enjoys a 4th of July hot dog. You're an American. Well, I live in Russia. I mean, if I get a Russian citizenship, I'm going to always be an American that was, I was born somewhere else and I moved here. I'm never going to be Russian for Russians, never. And then you go to a more extreme situation. George, you can learn Mandarin Chinese. You can get a PhD in it, okay? You can be fluent in it, okay? And you can change your dress code and, eat with chopsticks and everything. You'll never be Chinese, ever. Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. And the Russians approach the outside world is that way. We're comfortable with who we are, right. And you're comfortable the way you are. So right. What's the problem here? Right. And but the West, in its messianic view, must create the world in its own image, and the global South has no interest in that agenda.
No, that's right. And it is kind of interesting. I mean, when the European countries, they go to Africa and they start berating African countries as to, hey, why do you entertain Russians? Why do you allow Russians to come here? And why do you sign agreements with Russians? But Russians don't go to Mali or wherever, or Cameroon and say, why are you signing agreements with the Americans? Stop it, cancel this agreement. You only sign agreements with us. It is a very much a distinct mindset. You're either with us or you're against us. And if you're against us, we are going to come after you with, all the weapons at our disposal.
A perfect example, George, with the COVID vaccine. Russia had its variant and it was willing to give it to Ukraine right next door. And a lot of people in Russia have relatives in Ukraine. It's, again, not benign self-interest. Okay. And nope, you can't take the Russian vaccine. No, you must take Pfizer. You must take ours. Okay. I mean, it's a health issue, for goodness sake.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everybody. I think, like I said, it was our monthly rant about what's going on, and it's genuine on both sides. It's
on both sides, exactly.
and very much needed.
Yes.
All right, this is The Gaggle. It's Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Please keep the comments coming in. Really enjoy reading them, okay? Yes. Yeah. It means you guys are paying attention, and I really like it.
Yeah. I love reading the comments, when even when people are critical and always learning something from people's comments. So that's
all right. Please visit our store, and this time tomorrow, I know where all you guys will be. You'll be watching George's live cast.
Exactly. Live stream 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Please come and join me. Come with comments, criticisms, suggestions, and on the way out the door, think about whom we haven't heard from, and Buddy, who's keeping a low profile, but who's thinking about a major initiative and about the tip jar. This tip jar crisis cannot continue. So
the tip jar is in the kitchen. He was just checking. Okay,
he was just checking. So in order to keep him calm, at least for a time being, whip out any coins you have in your pocket, dunk them in his tip jar. That'll calm him down, and we'll all get some peace and quiet. So remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye, buddy.